Alright, in this video we'll walk you through the cash conversion cycle for Coca Cola and Pepsi Cola. And the cash conversion cycle is essentially a method of measuring how long cash is tied up in working capital. Alright, so the cash conversion cycle is the days of inventory, and that's how long it takes on average to sell the inventory. Days plus days of receivables, that's how long on average things sit in accounts receivable. Add those two together and you got what's called the operating cycle. So that's how long in between when Coca Cola bought something and put it into inventory and then sold it and then actually got paid for it. That's the operating cycle. Now that's about 90-something days, but that's offset because of the payables. When Coca Cola buys something, they don't pay cash for it. They have an accounts payable, so this 90 days here is offset by the 60 days here, and so the cash conversion cycle is actually only about a month. Alright, so to get the days of inventory, it's inventory divided by 1 day's cost of goods sold. The days of receivables is accounts receivable divided by 1 day's sales. And then days of payables is accounts payable divided by 1 day's cost of goods sold. Alright, to get the 1 day's sales, take annual sales divided by 365. To get the 1 day's cost of goods sold, take annual cost of goods sold divided by 365. Alright, so that's how we're doing the calculation, and we can see in comparison Pepsi Cola's days of inventory is much lower than Coca Cola's. I don't know why. If I dug deeper into the financial statement, that would probably give me some indication, but remember Pepsi Cola has got a lot of food business that Coca Cola doesn't. So I'm not sure why there's a difference here, but I can tell there's a pretty big difference. The days of inventory is twice as high for Coke as it is for Pepsi. And it's gone down a little bit for Pepsi, going from 42 days down to around 35 days, so they're not holding, or they don't have as much money tied up in inventory. And it's gone down slightly for Coca Cola, but not to the same extent. Now if we look in here at days of receivables, those are almost identical for these two firms. So the amount of money tied up in receivables is almost identical, but because of the difference in inventory, the operating cycle for Coca Cola is about a month longer than the operating cycle for Pepsi Cola. If we go down here and then look for another big difference, though, it's the days of accounts payable. Coca Cola pays their bills now in about 2 months, but that's up from roughly 7 weeks. So you're up from 7 weeks to 8+ weeks, and you see a longer accounts payable period here for Pepsi, but it's gotten it was always higher, and it's gotten yet higher still. So back in 2012 it was 52 days for Pepsi versus 38 days for Coca Cola, and now it's 80 days for Pepsi versus 60 days for Coca Cola. So Pepsi has a lot more of its suppliers' money used to help it fund stuff. Now, one thing you notice is that their cash conversion cycle over at Coke has gone from about 2 months to about 1 month, and that's good. The shorter the cash conversion cycle, the better, all else held constant. With Pepsi Cola, it's actually gone negative. That means that they buy stuff, stick it on the shelf, sell it to people on an accounts receivable, and then collect on the accounts receivable in about 70 days, but they don't have to pay for the crap for about 80 days. So they actually have a negative cash conversion cycle. They're getting paid for their product before they actually have to pay for it. Nothing wrong with that. If you can get away with it, it's a good way of raising money. Alright, so it's gone from 24 days down to 17. So essentially it went from 3 weeks to 2 weeks to 1 week to negative a week, and now it's almost negative 2 weeks. So Pepsi Cola is much more effective at managing its cash conversion cycle than our good friends over at Coca Cola. There might be good reasons for that. we would want to look a little bit deeper to try and figure out why that is, and you'd go through the 10K and or through news articles trying to figure out how come there is such a big difference. But at this point, remember, all we're saying here is that there is a very big difference in how they manage their operating cycle and their cash conversion cycle.